Let's talk about the future of Airbnb. As we hike Devil's Bridge here in Sedona, Airbnb has lost their only one advantage, and so the landscape is going to quickly change over the next 12 months. You've seen in the news, Airbnb's market share is down below 50%. VRBO's at 22%, bookings at 8%, and that's up 17% year over year. And new channels are popping out of the woodwork. Wimstay is up 400% year over year. That's huge growth for everybody but Airbnb. And I believe this is just the beginning. I think Airbnb's market share is going to drain fast. I alluded to Airbnb losing a key advantage. Let me explain what that is. When Airbnb first hit the market, they had a huge advantage because they were trying to be like Apple, which was a smart idea. Steve Jobs changed the world by making his products sticky. Sticky is where it's hard to leave a product. He made it so that way you could get anywhere in the iPhone in 3 swipes or less. He also made it where it'd be super weird to go from having blue bubble text messages to green ones. This and iCloud were all features that are sticky. And Airbnb did this for hosts. Airbnb made it so easy for hosts to run their business with features like Pro Tools, like the multi-calendar and length of stay discounts, that it was hard for hosts to run their businesses without Airbnb. And the longer they kept this idea going, the longer they would have maintained their advantage. But somehow along the way, Airbnb lost the assignment. One of the biggest moats for Apple was their incompatibility with other technologies. Apple and PC were two completely different machines. You couldn't use the same hardware, they didn't run on the same software. They were as different as they possibly could be, to make it impossible to switch, if ever. And yes, this makes it harder to grow a business. But if you have a culture like Apple, or what Airbnb was trying to create, that culture is strong enough to keep people on your tech until you hit a critical mass, and then you could become the market leader and everyone is forced to reckon with you. But Airbnb actually abandoned ship by accident, I think, somewhere along the way. Airbnb opened up their software through an API so people could build softwares with their software. This doesn't sound so bad at the beginning, but this is really what's crushed them over the last 4 or 5 years. There are softwares like Price Labs and Wheelhouse that help you change your prices on Airbnb. In order to do this well, you need an API connection. There are softwares that I use like Guesty, which is a channel manager. That allows you to connect Airbnb to a centralized brain and run your business from that brain. But what that did is it allowed hosts like myself to connect to VRBO and Booking.com and now Wimstay that's up 400% year over year and have it run on a centralized brain. Airbnb killed their moat. Now, I know what you might be thinking, and you're correct. This alone isn't what killed Airbnb. They have a huge optics problem right now. Brian Chesky made a lot of bad decisions because they went public. And Brian Chesky, as the CEO of Airbnb, wanted a big, sexy exit, and so he took the path that could get him paid, not the path that would maintain integrity with his host community. What these crimes started to look like on Airbnb was Airbnb started removing listings of hosts over negative reviews. But hosts could not dispute those negative reviews to save their listings. And then Airbnb gave huge refunds to guests during COVID. Airbnb has also imposed a 50% penalty if Airbnb cancels a reservation and blames it on the host. Policy after policy after policy, they've aimed to become more restrictive to try to keep their grasp of hosts, instead of innovating to keep hosts like they used to do between 2014 and 2018, making sticky widgets that people would rely upon. Now, whenever you see a summer release or a winter release, there's nothing for hosts. So they've betrayed hosts and they've betrayed guests, and they've fallen apart in 2 stages. And let's explain both of those. Airbnb's first unbreakable wall was their exclusive quality product. They adopted hosts, and hosts only used Airbnb. And guests, if they wanted a great short-term rental, they'd have to go to Airbnb. So even if they upset guests, where a guest didn't get a refund for something, or a host canceled, or something else, guests knew back in 2017 to 2020 that if they wanted a short-term rental instead of a hotel, they really were out of options. True, VRBO and Booking.com existed, but their products were archaic, hard to navigate, and absent of product. And if Airbnb was only loyal to this, their unbreakable wall of exclusive, novel product, they would have had enough time to figure out the rest without freaking out like they did, and then eventually screwing up their optics with their guests, too. And once Airbnb saw the writing on the wall with hosts, they had to pivot to try to save their relationship with guests. If they could own the guests, then it doesn't matter if the hosts want to leave, because they would be forced to list on Airbnb because that's where all the guests are. Essentially the reverse of their initial plan, keep the hosts and stick the guests' feet to the fire. So they started making huge changes. a lot of guest-friendly policies. They destroyed Superhost to create something called guest favorites. But what they didn't realize is they made another key mistake along the way. Brian Chesky got greedy. All of his initial growth efforts started to realize there was an opportunity for hosts like myself, people who wanted 100 or more doors. So he built the software to be friendly to hosts of scale. He started to abandon the individual little hosts, the excess economy hosts, the ones that would lower their price because they didn't really need the money, the ones that would pick you up from the airport and pour you a bottle of wine and have a conversation with you because they liked hosting. Airbnb abandoned their best hosts along the way in favor of the quick buck. So when Airbnb started making these friendly changes for guests, these big businesses have no loyalty to Airbnb, so they went more multi-channel. They even made their own direct booking websites and started to learn marketing so they could find their own guests, just like a hotel would. These are very capable business owners, and Airbnb screwed them over twice along the way. All of these decisions were reactionary moves, but sold to investors and shareholders like they were visionaries of the future. What they did not account for next is the fact that guests are so fickle and the market is so mature that if you make a guest upset and they choose to leave Airbnb, now that the hosts are somewhere else, they never have to come back to Airbnb. And so the last 3 years were an optics nightmare for Airbnb because all of the big hosts scaled too far past COVID, and then there was a pullback. Smaller margins, less guests, less operating capital, and now less quality. And because most of Airbnb's inventory now was scaled operators, it was harder for Airbnb to force these hosts to rein back and improve their quality. These businesses from the outside saw this as a war of attrition. They thought that cutting costs was a greater priority than improving their quality of product. Because also this is a misunderstood industry. Many investors see this as a real estate play. Just buckle down, cut your costs, hold on to your real estate, and the market will come back. I've never seen a market more misunderstood. And we haven't even hit the plot twist yet. All of this hit at once. Post-COVID, Airbnb went public. Shareholders wanted their profit because they bought it at such an inflated valuation. Real estate investors got in post-COVID because they thought this would be easy money. The market pulled back, scaled operators failed, people started leaving Airbnb. Airbnb was getting it from all sides, guests, hosts, and shareholders alike. And then hotels jumped in, like Hilton's ad campaign against Airbnb, and all the bought social media against Airbnb about cleaning fees and lack of transparency and Airbnb horror stories. Now on YouTube, if you type in Airbnb, it's not just opportunities and cool listings. There's a lot of creators talking about how Airbnb is dead, how Airbnb is trash. You might have actually found this video from the same type of search. Can you believe that? And that brings us to today, where Airbnb has some real problems on their hands. Everything we just discussed is why Airbnb is under 50% market share. The only way that Airbnb can save themselves is to recruit a new world of loyal hosts that won't list on other channels and that will create good product and keep it just on Airbnb. So that way Airbnb can recover their reputation. But the internet is full of free how-to information, and all of the new thought leadership in our space is talking about going multi-channel as a requirement to do short-term rentals. Airbnb has missed the bus on having an exclusive access to hosts. Every new host that enters this space will do so by way of a channel manager, will get on Airbnb, and will likely get on at least 3 other channels within the first 6 months of their operation. And if every new short-term rental listing is everywhere, then Airbnb can no longer grow against their competition. Every single major competitor will grow with Airbnb at the same rate. So really, what can Airbnb do now to compete against their growing competition? Airbnb's done a few things. They've really doubled down back into private rooms again, which is how they got their first start. This is competitive against hotels. It's a way to truly be a price leader against hotel inventory, where hotels otherwise have a cost advantage. A house has a hard time cleaning the property for less than $200. There's no way a house can compete against the cleaning efficiency of a Hyatt. And even Marriott Homes and Villas, that has homes of their own now, they're not going to list private rooms. There's just not enough money there, and again, it competes with their hotel product. Marriott Homes and Villas won't take every single property. They focused on homes mostly, but they will take 2-bedroom apartments if it's in a space where they don't have enough hotel inventory. They might even, on a rare case, take a 1-bedroom, but again, only in absence of their own hotel inventory. They also created services and experiences. These are other ways to do business on Airbnb. You can book a tour, pub crawl, you can book a massage, get your hair done, get your makeup done. Airbnb is hoping that people who want a quality stay will book on an Airbnb because they also can book a massage. Like this will be their moat against VRBO. I don't really think it's a very high moat, but they're grasping at straws and they're trying. Now, if you're a host, don't worry. None of this is bad news. In fact, it's actually kind of good for you because you watch videos like this, you're going to be a mile ahead of everyone else. This video is telling you, go multi-channel, and you're going to do just fine. And even more than just going multi-channel, we want to be adventurous in the channels that we're choosing. Whimstay has grown over 400%, and I want you to imagine what it's like to be early to a channel where they don't have customers yet, but because of that, they don't have hosts either. Then they have a few hosts, then they get lucky in their marketing, and boom, you might remember VRBO did a Super Bowl commercial. After that commercial, my calendar was full 50% of VRBO bookings for like a quarter or 4 months. It worked, and every now and then this will happen. And what I'm saying is I think that this is going to happen a lot more often because Hopper and VRBO, for example, are trying to take an angle where they get businesses to pre-sign up to use them for their accommodation needs. Meaning that if you're listed on Hopper, they might just hand you bookings that they got from a business deal. And Airbnb's not doing that. And Bring Fido might do like a collab with the ASPCA or PETA or local animal shelters. And all of a sudden everybody will know that Bring Fido is a channel that is pet friendly. All the houses you can bring your dog. And that could lead to an uptick of bookings if you're pet friendly. And this brings us to the heart of the real issue, my friends. Channels like Whimstay, Hopper, VRBO, Airbnb, they are going to have to reach in their pocket and pull out the bucks on guest acquisition. Because hosts, now we have control. I say that with cautious optimism because hosts that are not multi-channel will get crushed. But channels that aren't marketing to get guests, they're going to get crushed too. So the future of Airbnb is that Airbnb is not Airbnb anymore. And people are still going to use the phrase like they're Kleenex. But the truth is, every business owner needs to go multi-channel. And Airbnb is going to go down to 35% market share in the next 18 months. Mark that. Hey friends, welcome to Devil's Bridge. So in summary, now's the best time to do short-term rentals because everybody's going to lose, even Airbnb. Watch this video next. That'll teach you everything you need to know about starting a business in this space. And as always, I'll see you on the other side.